Welcome to A European Life. I'm Ajay Goyal, and I'm joined by my co host, the wonderful world traveler, Elizabeth. A European Life is a very special podcast for the global creators, wanderers, travelers, for whom travel is more than a curiosity, more than a hobby, and it's even more than a lifestyle. It's for those that are looking to make a new home, looking for a place where they can be inspired, where they can spend the best time of their life, and where they can create and give their best to the world and to humanity, create a good business, create their most wonderful output. That's where they would go and write a book or write a wonderful code or create a new app or a website, work remotely. But what are those places? Europe has been my home for the last 30 years. Elizabeth, tell us a little bit about what Europe means to you and what our listeners can look forward to.
Europe for me means Europe is my home. I'm actually from Switzerland, so we're always trying to not be part of Europe, but we are, whether we like it or not. What this podcast is also for is for people who need information, lots of information. And as a past tour guide many years ago, I can imagine how people feel when they arrive in a new place and they have to get it all together. I would have liked to have such a podcast at the time. It didn't exist. I had to look at books and ask people. But in this case, definitely this is going to be a lot of very valuable information, a lot of value for people who want to start a new life. And we are going to help you do that.
So, time to introduce ourselves. My name is Ajay. I was born and raised in India, completed my engineering in India, and I have been a serial entrepreneur for the last 30 years. So, like Elizabeth said, when I first traveled in 1989, there was no internet, obviously. There were no mobile phones. There was no one we could reach out to. One could read some random book about that country in the library, but that gave you no idea of what you were about to step into, what you could really expect. The world was very fragmented back then. There was no Schengen zone. We needed a visa for every European country. But since then, the world has changed. Europe has changed so much for the better. I have truly enjoyed living, working, traveling to more than 100 regions and cities of Europe. I've had homes in London, Copenhagen, Cyprus, where Elizabeth and we both met and became friends. And I hope that through this podcast, we can make the experience of those who are now contemplating moving to Europe a little bit more easy, productive, and friendly, so that you don't have to have the friction that we encountered when we traveled across Europe 5, 10, 20 years ago. Elizabeth, tell us a little bit about yourself so that our viewers know what a vast experience of traveling around the world you have.
I was a tour guide in my 20s. I lived and worked in, I don't know how many countries at the time, but I found the love of my life in Cyprus, and that's why I'm living here. My husband is Cypriot. We have 2 grown-up children. As I already said, I'm originally from Switzerland, and Switzerland is my home. There was once an article about me in a Swiss newspaper which said Switzerland is my life insurance. So in case I ever need to go back, that would be it. I speak 6 languages, and I have worked as an interpreter for the Cyprus and European Police Association for 17 years. Which of course was more travel opportunities, lots of European cities. And I have my own podcast, which is called Most Memorable Journeys, because I love people. I love listening to people's stories. I love listening to life as a journey. I like to talk to people about places, but also about their life as a journey. And I think we can share a lot about the stuff that I heard on my podcast. The reason why I started it, just very quickly, when we couldn't travel during COVID, I felt like I was missing a limb. And I thought, if I can't travel, at least I can talk about it.
Traveling inspires, but some of the travelers, for example, the kind of people you interview on Most Memorable Journeys, your podcast, are also inspired people. So I think it's some of the most inspired, curious people, some of the most creative people yearning to discover something, curious about the world, they travel. And the more they travel, the more inspiring and inspired they become. Isn't that so?
Oh, totally. I think people who travel are interested in other places, and people who travel are also interested in other people. Because when you speak to somebody and you realize that they only talk about themselves, then they're not interesting. Then they are just self-centered. And people who travel have a very, traveling opens your horizon. Traveling makes you more humble. Traveling actually shows you that we are all the same, and that you are just part of a very small place, and how it shows us how small we are.
We both have lived very many years in Cyprus. I've always had a home here while I have been exploring the world and traveling the world. So, but we are both very biased towards Cyprus. We love this island dearly. So I think we have to be fair to our viewers and listeners. And we should be talking about cities that we traveled to rather than the city where we have been living in Cyprus, which is the beautiful coastal city of Limassol. Although I love Larnaca and I love Paphos as well, but we would be starting with continental Europe. What can our viewers expect in this podcast? As Elizabeth said, we will take you beyond the obvious tourist attractions. What we want to talk to you about is what makes some of these European cities very special. Why is it that for centuries, great writers, whether they are from Asia or Europe, they come to these European cities to find what they have within them? What is it that the city gives to them? What is it that the culture of that country and those people gives to them that helps them prosper, that helps them become great, and that helps them achieve their dreams? So we want to give you those insights and those secrets so that you can be what you desire to be. And perhaps that city has that something very special for you that you've been waiting for you in your life. We will start today with the city of Lisbon. But before I do, Elizabeth, you speak 6 languages. Let me ask you a question, and I speak only 3. Is it necessary today in Europe to speak the language of that country, or is Europe so cosmopolitan that you can get by largely speaking English language?
Especially in Portugal, because I have been to Portugal quite a few times. Many people speak English. It is not necessary to speak Portuguese, and I don't think that there are so many people. I don't speak Portuguese because it's quite a special language. But yes, I believe that you can get by definitely in Portugal with English. However, one thing that I want to tell people who move to another country, even if you don't want to learn the language or you don't speak it, it is always nice to know a few words. It gives you a lot of more credibility. And also it shows that you care. If you can say hello and thank you and just a few things, it will make people smile at you if you know a few words of every place, of the language of every place where you are.
That is true. So I've been a few times to Lisbon. And the reason we're talking about Lisbon is that from my first visit, I fell in love with that city. Like everyone else, I'd heard a lot, read a lot, seen my bit of travel videos, and the city is so charming. And the first thing that captivates you, of course, is that it is a city set on several hills. I think it is 7 hills. But what I loved the most was the nature of the Portuguese people. They're just so welcoming, so polite, so gentle. There's something in Portuguese culture. They're so open. And this was a country that was a colonizer. Portuguese Vasco da Gama were the first to discover India. They were the first to establish a colony on the Indian subcontinent in Goa, and they were the last colonizers to leave India. But of all the European countries that went out and colonized some parts of the world, Portuguese seem the most uncolonial type of people. What is your first reaction when you came to Portugal?
Definitely the friendliness of people. As you say, they are very helpful, they're friendly, they are funny. That's another thing, that they have a good sense of humor. My experience with Portugal, I have never visited Portugal as a tourist. I have visited Portugal as an interpreter when I was traveling with the police at the time. And those guys from the Portuguese Police Association, they were just so wonderful. They were taking us out, showing us around, showing us the food, and just making sure that we feel comfortable. I think it's actually a very similar mentality to Cyprus, I have noticed.
Very welcoming. That's true. When I first arrived, I reached out to some of my former colleagues and I said, I'm there for a few days. And they just would go out of their way, find time in their schedules just to meet up with me, show me around, give me recommendations of where to rent a place, and so on. The thing about Lisbon is the streets are paved with mosaic. And that is something very unique about Portugal. The whole city feels like it's a museum, doesn't it?
It does. And I had a funny experience because I was in Portugal a few years ago. And I don't know, a week later, I went to visit my daughter who was doing an internship in Hong Kong. And we took a trip to Macau. And when I got off the boat in Macau and walked into the old town, it's the same thing like Portugal, like Lisbon, the same floors and the same walls and the same houses. So they were, as you say, they had colonies, and Macau was one of them. But yes, it is a museum. Everywhere is something to see wherever you look.
Yeah, and in the square where they have this, they create these waves, and you feel you are standing on the waves, and they create this optical illusion. So the city has a lot of love for itself. They care for their city. And they have been very successful because it is perhaps one of the oldest cities in Europe. They've been very successful in preserving that authentic old look and experience, while at the same time, Portugal is also one of the most modern cities of Europe. Uh, it is digitally one of the most advanced cities in Europe. The Global Web Conference every year that brings about 60 to 70,000 people is held in Lisbon. But the first feeling that you have is that this is a city that loves its past and it respects its past, while at the same time, it is a very forward looking city, and you immediately notice so many nationalities going about going about their lives, so many migrants that you feel you are in the capital of universe. It's some feeling that I have never had anywhere else in Europe, that when you arrive there, Portuguese and the city of Lisbon make you feel almost instantly at home. Let's talk a little bit about the beauty of the city before we come to some practical things. Um, I explore the cities walking, and I regularly clock 12, 15 kilometers a day exploring that city. Lisbon is a difficult city to walk because it's got a lot of hilly walks, it's got a lot of elevation, uh, but it is worth it. Have you been able to walk around and explore the city?
Yes, I have. I have actually walked up to the castle. That's one nice view. I wanted probably the best view over the city. And another thing that I once did in the afternoon that I hadn't known about is going down to that to the park where the World Exposition or something, where you have all those buildings still from that time, which is a completely different part of town. And what I also wanted to say, one thing that makes every town more attractive is a body of water, and Lisbon is on the sea. So walking along the sea, walking in those narrow roads where all the old part is, plenty of ways to walk. And as you say, and I think it goes for most cities except maybe Los Angeles, but that's another story. Walking is the best way to see every city.
Yes. So if you are a creative wanderer, if you're a digital nomad, and you are planning to find your new home in Europe, be prepared to walk. Always have walking shoes. Get up early. Meet a city just before sunrise. There's no better way to go around the city before it starts bustling, before it starts buzzing. It's not just that you get to know the nightlife, you have to get to know the city when it is just waking up. And Lisbon is at its most glorious with sunrise. When you say it's a city on the sea, what is very interesting is that it's also a city of great infrastructure and architecture. So they have that big, long bridge across the river connecting to the southern peninsula and to the southern coast. And they have developed the whole of the water line, which is now a great dining area. There are some architectural and historic wonders there. It's a city that is made for travelers. It's a very traveler friendly, very walker friendly city. So that is one part of Lisbon that is absolutely awesome. The other part is, Elizabeth, you mentioned walking up to the castle. Lisbon has something that no other European capital can claim. It has the Miraduros. It has those viewpoints where people gather to see the sunset, where you get a magnificent view of all of Lisbon from these four high points, viewpoints, the perches. And in the evening, people gather there with their musical instruments. They bring some glasses of wine, and every evening turns into a party. If the weather is good, it's an unending picnic. So Lisbon has got so much to give, and it just opens itself to you from these viewpoints. So as a visitor, be prepared to fall in love. Let's talk a little bit now about life and living in Lisbon.
I have another viewpoint, Ajay, that is a little bit more chic. If you don't want to walk up somewhere and sit on the ground with a bottle of wine, I think one of the nicest places to watch the sunset is the bar of the Sheraton Hotel on the top floor. That's my little contribution to views.
Interesting. Well, you can also explore Lisbon and on the old yellow 28 number tram route. It's a part of all TikTok videos, and the whole world knows about it, and people have seen it in so many documentaries and videos and read about it in the books. But when you actually do it, and I have traveled it in many different ways. I get on the tram, I get off at every stop, I explore that area, I get back on, I change sides, I sit on the right, I sit on the left, I look at the buildings and I see a building, then I get off at a stop, I come back, I explore those buildings, go into a museum, go into a church. That tram route is absolutely exceptional. Even the San Francisco tram, which is a world iconic heritage tram route, just pales in comparison to the Lisbon 28 number tram. So keep that in mind. So here is a peek into what Lisbon is like from our wonderful producer, Chiara. Chiara, take us through the beauties and wonders of the city of Lisbon.
Hello there, it's Chiara. Today we are going on a journey to find out more about the city of Lisbon, Portugal. Lisbon is a city of breathtaking beauties and wonders, but let's find out why it is so special. First of all, the beautiful views. As you mentioned before, Lisbon is famous for its stunning views. You will find hills with colorful houses and viewpoints called miraduros, where you can see the whole city and the river. The view from there at sunset is simply amazing. Lisbon is also full of historic streets. In fact, the streets in Lisbon are like a history book. You will walk on cobble streets and see old buildings with charming tiles called azulejos. Each tile tells a story. Another characteristic of Lisbon are the warmth and friendliness of the people. Don't be surprised if you walk down the streets and strangers will greet you with a smile. Fado is the soulful music of Portugal. You can listen to it in small restaurants and feel the emotions in the singer's voice. And as we mentioned before, Lisbon is full of history. In the city, you can find plenty of castles and palaces. For example, São Jorge Castle, where you can step back in time and enjoy stunning views. If you suffer from seasonal depression, then Lisbon might be the right place for you. This city enjoys lots of sunshine. The weather is usually very pleasant, making it a great place to visit all year round. Overall, Lisbon offers a vibrant culture. It is a city that loves to celebrate. You will find festivals, parades, and local traditions throughout the year. I have a friend who lived in Lisbon for around 7 months, and she told me that during the summertime you can go to a festival pretty much each and every night. She said that you will never be bored in this city, there is always something to do. So, yeah, overall, Lisbon is a city full of beauty, history, and friendly people.
Elizabeth, Lisbon has had, and all of Portugal have had, a very unique phenomenon going on. Portugal has been one of the most popular tourist destinations for people from all over the world coming to look for sandy beaches, sunshine, and enjoy the summer. But in the last few years, in the last decade, it has also become one of the most popular destinations for people to migrate from North America, from United States and Canada, certainly from United Kingdom, all over Northern Europe. And my sense is that it is because of more than sunshine, and it is because of more than the sea. And it probably is a mix of the Portuguese charm, the beauty of the city, but also very affordable cost of living. Have you had any thoughts about, because you come from one of the most expensive countries in the world, which is Switzerland, and Cyprus is not cheap either. This island has been steadily getting very pricey. The cost of living crisis has hit us since the pandemic, but Portugal still seems to be a sane place when it comes to cost.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Portugal is very, very good value for money, and even in Lisbon, which is the capital, which usually tends to be a little bit higher than other places, even in Lisbon, things are so affordable. I mean, you can have a coffee in Lisbon for €1. I had my last coffee in, I don't know where I was, I think here in Cyprus, for depending on where you go, it's €6. So it is very good value for money. Another thing that I also wanted to mention, why people would move to Portugal, I think it's also very well connected when it comes to flights. You are already quite far across you're on the Atlantic, so going to the US is not so long, and within Europe there are good flight connections everywhere in Europe. But
True.
cost of living, definitely, you can have a
Yeah.
meal for €10, including a drink. And another thing that I do like, me as a wine lover, they drink at lunchtime.
They are per capita the largest wine drinkers in the world, and their wines are great. We'll come to that, but they're also very affordable. And about the cost of living, I've traveled also not only in the mainland Portugal on the continent, but also to the islands of Azores archipelago and also to Madeira. And Azores, the paradise that it is, and we'll talk about it another time, I was shocked that the most wonderful and amazing meal, a three-course meal with a bottle of wine, was the cost of having an average or below average meal with a glass of wine in much of Europe. So it's very affordable, but the affordability experience starts from the moment you land at the airport. You either take a cab or you hire a Bolt. Bolt is the more popular ride sharing app, more popular than Uber, although Uber is also quite popular. You get a cab, and the airport is not closer than many other European cities to the city center, but a ride to the center of the city is between 6 to 7 euros. And that is when you're taking a cab. You could also take a bus and pay 1.5 euros. So they have succeeded in keeping the city very affordable. The second thing about Lisbon is there are so many migrant corner stores where you can buy fresh produce and foods of the world from the migrant stores. And they offer you not only the big variety of what you can get, but it's also very affordable. Many of these migrants live a very humble lifestyle, and they try to keep things at a very decent price level. So Lisbon is near perfect if you are not a super wealthy, rich migrant, but you're a person who makes a living by creating something, by working remotely, you're a digital nomad, you will find the city very affordable. With a caveat, there's been so much demand that the rentals have skyrocketed. So that is a separate area. But let's have Chiara tell you a little bit about the cost of living in Lisbon. Chiara, take it away.
According to the data that we analyzed, you can live in Lisbon with less than 1,500 euro. Of course, this can change according to your lifestyle. The only thing that could be a little pricey in Lisbon is rent. In the last few years, so many digital nomads went to Lisbon and decided to move there, so the housing market is under a lot of pressure. In fact, you can expect to pay 900 to 1,200 euro a month for rent in Lisbon. As for the utilities, you can expect to pay around 150, for the groceries maybe 200 euro a month, for transportation 40 euro a month, and if you want to rent a co-working space, then you can expect to pay around 200 or 300 euro a month. If, like me, you're a creative wanderer and your budget is not too high, Lisbon might be the right city for you. The cost of living is low, and according to Internations, 71% of experts rated the general cost of living in Lisbon positively. Lisbon even ranks number 5 in Personal Finance Index 2022. But yeah, overall, Lisbon is still an affordable city.
Elizabeth, food and wine. What can you tell us about the Portuguese food and Portuguese wines?
What I know about Portuguese food is mostly seafood. I love everything that some of those places only do serve seafood. Of course, the other thing that I like very much is a pastel de nata. I think everybody in the world knows those little cakes. Everybody has those for dessert, and you find shops only with filled with pastel de nata. Of course, there's a lot of other food available because you mentioned before Portugal was colonizing places, and there are lots of dishes from those countries that have been colonized. And of course, then there is this famous vinho verde, which I have only found so far in Portugal, which is very, very good and also very affordable.
Yeah, so you're not only, so when you come to Lisbon, you don't have to just eat the Portuguese food. They do have a sweet tooth, by the way. All their bakeries and patisseries are full of sugar coated, very sugary. It's like an appointment with diabetes. But if you're not into that, enjoying very heavily sweetened pastries and cakes every day or several times a day, the variety of food is just abundant. You find not only local seafood dishes, you find very good Spanish influenced foods. In Lisbon, you find great Italian food. You can find very good pizzas and pastas. But then, as you start to explore the city, as I did, I found some of the best Nepali restaurants in Europe to be in Lisbon. And
No,
it is
that's
so
interesting.
good. There are so many Nepali restaurants. For some reason, there are many Nepali migrants. And, Nepalis are beautiful, always smiling, hardworking, hospitable people. And they brought all of their culture to Lisbon. And you can go and get the momos, the Nepali momo. You can get the Nepali Indian curries. You can get the Nepali chow mein. You can get all the Himalayan dishes, and they're absolutely delightful. So don't limit yourself to just Portuguese food, which is amazing. You will find food from South America. You will find food from Nepal. You will find food from Punjab because there are many migrants from Punjab. You will find good curry houses. And you will find, in general, very affordable food, even in the tourist areas. So that is about the food. But Portugal is also the wine country, right?
But yes, of course, plenty. Every country that is in the south has a lot of sun, and the more sun on the grapes, the better the wine. And of course, the famous Porto is comes from Portugal. There is a lot to try. There's a lot to travel around, a lot to taste, and I believe that it's always worth trying anything local that's possible, and sometimes even make a friend who invites you home. And you, when you get to taste cooking from a Portuguese mother, that is the real deal.
That's right. I mean, Portugal is home to some of the celebrity-owned vineyards. Several rock stars and Hollywood stars have gone to Portugal, and they buy these vineyards and produce beautiful wines. What is amazing is that you can be served a bottle of wine, even now in Lisbon, at the price of a wine in a supermarket in a big store like Tesco or Sainsbury's or Lidl, which is quite amazing. I remember picking up a wine rated on an app at 4.8, and it cost me only 11 euros. Where else in the world will you have something like that? That's Portugal for you. Let's move from food and wine and all the wonderful things that we've talked about to something that people complain a lot about, and that's the Portuguese bureaucracy and slow speed of getting things done. Elizabeth, you've traveled there as a part of your work. Maybe you have a view on that?
Well, I haven't had any experience with any authorities because I was the authority. I was traveling with the police. So obviously things worked well for me. I have never actually worked in Portugal as a tour guide, so I don't have any experience with applying for an work permit. But I think it's generally in the south, things are a little slower, and Portugal is no exception. We just need a lot of patience when you want to apply for, I don't know what it's called in Portugal, a staying permit. You need patience and you need to be friendly. We have talked about that before with you, Ajay. It's important to have good manners when you go to a strange country. You are the guest. Never forget that you are the guest, and that you are friendly to the person that you are dealing with. And that sometimes helps a lot to speed up procedures a little bit.
Whether it does or not, and the procedures are very slow. I watch a lot of expat groups. I watch a lot of digital nomad groups. Do not expect things to happen at a very fast pace. Things will happen at their own pace. They can very often be chaotic. They can very often seem uh, difficult. Your visas will expire, your application appointments will not come through. But it's very important that when you go to Portugal and you are thinking of moving to Lisbon, go with an abundance of patience and good spirits. If you're not patient, and if you lose your cool and you lose your goodwill, then things can take a negative turn. Then they're not obliged to be so welcoming to you. So be cheerful, be prepared for the long run. Don't expect things to happen on the push of a button, and learn to navigate the Portuguese bureaucracy, the Portuguese system, especially the migration system, which is under a lot of pressure because so many tens of thousands of people want to move to that small country. So let's have some appreciation for that, some empathy for that, that they also need to protect their country, they need to process these applications, they need to manage this migration. So navigate this migration process with as much patience as you can muster, and then some more.
And I think when you list, I tend to do that, when you list all the pros and cons of a place or of anything you do, the pros in Portugal and in Lisbon will be so much more. And this slow process is a small price to pay for all the good stuff that you can get there.
Absolutely. Let's talk about one of the most important things that we as travelers, we have this inner compass or benchmark. And how comfortable do we feel there? And when we arrive in a city and we've spent 24 hours there, we've interacted with a few people, there's an inner voice that tells you, yeah, it's all right. Or there's an inner voice that says, oh, I'm not very comfortable. I'll be a tourist, I'll have a good time, and I'll move away. And yeah, maybe. In Lisbon, I feel a sense of comfort. I feel like I become a part of that city almost instantly. How's your feeling when you go
Oh, totally. Yes. You see, I think I've been living in Cyprus for so many years. Living in the south has a lot in common, whether it's Italy, Spain, but especially Portugal and Lisbon for that matter. Very comfortable from the moment you get there. It's the friendliness of the people and it's the easiness of getting around. And it's not a huge town where you don't know where to start. It is actually all very, very manageable. But then again, I mean, not everybody has the same expectations. And I think the best way to find out if you like a place or not before you decide to move somewhere permanently is to visit.
there? Yeah. Well, as a person of Asian origin, I have occasionally, very rarely, but occasionally come across uh, racism. Sometimes subtle, sometimes it's very overt. And I think people uh, would be interested in knowing whether there is diversity, equality, inclusiveness in Lisbon. And the answer is on all those 3 points, 10 out of 10. I have never felt uncomfortable in Lisbon. I've never been made to feel as though I'm different. they are almost naturally uh, accepting you as a part of their society, if not a part of their culture. You will not find Lisbon to be a city where there is any kind of discrimination, institutional or at an individual level. You will not find any bigotry. You will find your experience of getting along and merging into the society almost seamless. So, from that point of view, those of you who are from the global south or the global east will find that Lisbon is one of the most welcoming, liberal places where everyone is treated equally. Let's talk a little bit about life in Lisbon. Chiara, take us through some of the main points about life in Lisbon.
I think if we had to find a word to describe Lisbon, according to the research we've done, that word would be easygoing. This city is welcoming, the people are nice, the food is really good. Many people can speak English here and even other languages, so it's a bit easier for expats and tourists to communicate. The transportation works well, but the city itself, it's not that big, so it's easy to get around. The nightlife is bustling, there's always something to do. There are a lot of festivals, for example the Santo Antonio Festival in summer. The cost of living is not too high. It's overall a city of beauty, both inside of the city and outside. In maybe half an hour, 1 hour, you can reach the ocean and you can surf. Imagine going out of the office or finishing work and just going to the beach. Overall, life in Lisbon offers a balanced mix of cultural richness, natural beauty, and a welcoming atmosphere. It's a city that has its own traditions, but also embraces modernity, making it an attractive destination for residents, visitors, and also digital nomads.
Elizabeth, to me, being in a city that has got such great history, and it is a city that has exported its culture to South America, Asia, all the way to Macau, and then it has brought some of the greatest things from those places back into Lisbon. How do you immerse yourself and get to know a country and its culture and its people by while you are there? How do you get to feel what that city is and what those people are?
Well, speaking to locals, of course, always helps. Reading, of course, preparing, speaking to locals, and visiting these places, visiting museums, visiting churches. Portugal is a Catholic country, lots of churches, a lot of places of worship. And there's another thing that I wanted to mention that probably explains that kindness a little bit. You know, in Switzerland, when we started bringing people to come to work from abroad, during the industrialization, when we first had guest workers from Italy, then we had guest workers from Spain, but then we had a lot of guest workers from Portugal. And these people, some of them stayed in Switzerland. They had children, and those children stayed. But many people went back to retire. And these people know what it's like when you have to start in a new country. And that always helps when they know how you feel. They will make you feel more welcome. So I think it is always important to be in touch with the locals, talk to people. When you are on your own, start talking to somebody, and you will understand if they want to talk to you or not. But yeah, visit museums, visit churches, galleries, whatever there is, whatever culture offers.
You made a very, that's very important, in fact. You don't feel in Lisbon, there's no stiff upper lip, there's no arrogance of a former colonial master. There's quite a lot of humility, and I think you just might have given us the secret of that. In fact, Portugal has had some very difficult economic times, and as recently as 30 years ago, when uh, Portugal was not doing so well, and oil was discovered in Venezuela. A lot of Portuguese families migrated to Venezuela to be a part of the oil economy. Some of them came back. So they themselves have been migrants. And that helps explain that while there is a lot of pride in their history and in their culture, there is also a lot of humility and a lot of welcoming attitude towards people who are coming to build a new life in Portugal, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, this is people who have experienced something themselves will always be much quicker to help because they will know what it's like, what it feels like. It's the same as being a refugee.
That's right. There is a rich diversity of museums, architectural wonders, beautiful churches, historic restaurants. So it is very important, and we highly recommend that whether you are traveling to Lisbon to explore the city as potentially your future home or you're already there, take some time off and immerse yourself in those museums. Spend time with those sculptures. Try to have conversations with those paintings. There is living history there. And it is it is a unique experience to try to have kind of a conversation with the past while you are very much in the present in a very digital country, a very modern country, a truly European values based society, extremely open, looking to future with a lot of hope and truly diverse. We hope that you will put Lisbon on the list of potential cities where you might want to make home to have a European life.